Joining me now is Mike Beam, who is the Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Secretary Beam, thanks for being with us. We're standing here today in the beautiful Flint Hills of Kansas. Tell our audience a little bit about the Flint Hills and why they're unique and so important.
Well, it's the last stand really of the tallgrass prairie, and there's so much history in the multi-generation families in ranching. In fact, the Kansas Livestock Association got its start right here in the Flint Hills when a group of ranchers got together and decided that they would be more effective in one voice. It's always been a real central part of the beef cattle industry and the rural communities. It's all based on, the open space, the families that make a living and care for these really unique grasslands.
And you mentioned the cattle producers. They're an important part of this community, but grazing then plays a big part not only in the Flint Hills, but really all across Kansas. Talk to us about the importance of grazing and the role it plays in conservation.
Well, that's the real unique part of beef cattle production is it's a very high protein, very high value agricultural product. And what a lot of us need to remember is much of that is derived from grasslands. And there's not any grasslands, at least in the United States, that are as productive in the 90 days in the summer. I mean, cattle will gain maybe as much as 3 pounds a day. It's very nutritious. It's so resilient.
Yeah, I don't think we can argue about the value of this grass looking at it here. The Great Plains Grass Initiative, I'd like to ask you about that. Talk about how in Kansas here, groups have partnered together to work within the initiative to stop the woody encroachment on grasslands such as these.
Well, I'm real excited because as I understand the impetus for this started with ranchers. I think it was a conversation that NRCS had with ranchers who maybe even initiated is if we don't take care of this woody encroachment, we're going to lose. It's so difficult and so expensive to reclaim it. And that education and awareness and buy-in, and NRCS is a perfect vehicle to help with technical service and getting funds on the ground. And I know when they first announced it, they credited the ranchers themselves saying this is what NRCS can do to help us long term.
So then let's talk about the role of cattle then. What can be done to help more people understand the key role that cattle play to healthy lands and conservation?
Well, that's one of the perceptions is that, cattle, and when you see the food on the plate, it's largely grain-based. Some question whether it's a wise use of resources. And I know folks in the cattle industry are always trying to find ways to provide the facts where the animals, most of their life is on grasslands, lands that have very little economic productive use other than from grazing animals. And it's the protein source that relies heavily on the forages. I mean, ranchers know that instinctively, and that's the one thing I've learned most through my career as listening to them. Yes, they'll say they're in the cattle business, but they know and they see themselves as holistic land managers because how they treat the land, how they enhance it and take care of it will help them profitability-wise, but it also helps their supply chain part of the protein sector, and that's, in most cases, cattle.
Secretary Beam, it's always such a pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming to the show today. Most importantly, thanks for all you do to support farmers and ranchers here in Kansas and their conservation efforts. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. It's just real exciting to do this.